Old School Lane Casual Chats is brought to you by Old School Lane, producing various content from blogs, videos, and podcasts discussing about movies, TV shows, video games, and everything else in between since 2011. You can check out the podcast on Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Radio Public, Overcast, Breaker, Pocket Cast, and YouTube. We're associated with Channel Frederator, Manic Expression, The Comic Book Cast, and The Arun Mehta Show. Everyone, welcome to a new episode of Casual Chats. I am Patricia, and I'm here with two very special guests. I am here with speedrunner Metroid Crime, so welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And I'm also here with one of the people behind Lady Arcaders. We have IndyVillain, so welcome.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about the 2010 indie platforming game VVVVVV. And we're going to be going over how we first got introduced to it, what are our favorite moments of the game, and why, even after over a decade later, it still resonates with a lot of people. So right before we get into that, I'd like to know, how did you first got introduced to the game?
Sure. I had, I have to think back to 2010. I had played another game from the same developer, called Super Hexagon. And I was playing that for iOS, and I don't exactly know how I came across V, but I would guess that I was probably looking up news about Super Hexagon to find out about it. But I absolutely love V. It is like one of my favorite games of all time, and it's amazing that, you know, in the year like 2023, it's still a game that I go back to.
Absolutely. Yeah. Especially if it's, you know, a game that is only just a simple little platformer that was inspired by like 1980s Commodore 64 and ZX Spectrum games. Like, you know, you have like Monty on the Run and Jet Set Willie. So, you know, something like a modern equivalent of that. You would think that, oh, you know, it's just like this little quirky indie game, but no, I mean, it's still pretty resonant, not only with like some of the best indie games that had ever been released on various platforms, but also even still to this day, you guys still even speed run it on, you know, Awesome Games Done Quick and Frost Fatalities and various other things.
Absolutely.
So, Indy, how did you first learn about the game?
I actually found it through Crime. I helped moderate her channel on Twitch, and she's been speedrunning it for the last year and or so. And I just picked it up watching her, and she made it look amazing. And now we've been racing it for like 8 months or so now, I think. So
yeah, I think so. Yeah,
it's been fantastic. I absolutely love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so let me just give a quick plot synopsis for those who don't know about what VVVVVV is about. I'm just going to read off what Steam has written down. Help! Everyone has been teleported away randomly. As the heroic Captain Viridian, it's up to you to find your friends, bring them back to safety, and save the universe. VVVVVV is a platform game all about exploring one simple mechanical idea. What if you reverse gravity instead of jumping? The game is designed to not artificially get your progress. In VVVVVV, there is no locks, no power-ups, no switches, nothing to stop you from progressing except the challenges themselves, which perfectly sums it up. So you play as Captain Viridian, and your crew get all separated into like this, unknown location, and you have to basically like wander around into these different sectors so that you can be able to find them. And you as mentioned earlier in the description, you just flip around, you go through many different obstacles, and you get through checkpoints, you find little trinkets along your path. And yeah, the whole point of the game is to find 5 of your crewmates and then find yourself out of the situation, right before that things just go too overwhelmingly hectic. So yeah, I think that one of the things that I really love about this game is that it's very basic with its mechanics, that it functions wonderfully. It brings up everything so clear with what your goal is to do. And I think that it works to its advantage, because usually with a lot of games, they tend to be like really, overwhelming or complex, or they just tend to like follow in the same structure that kind of like gets repetitive after a while. But I think what makes this game work is that each challenge and each room that you go to is something different, and it really just brings you more opportunities for you to think about how you'll be able to accomplish every single room and what each challenge has. And even after like you've completed that challenge, then you have another challenge you have to go through, and there'll even be a case where you have to overcome the challenge that you just went through a while back with all the skills that you picked up. So you keep learning as you're playing through the game.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah,
Yes.
so I'd like to know about what your favorite parts of the game are.
Sure. Oh my gosh, there are so many things I love about this game. In addition, like I do a lot of speedrunnings of this game, but there's a lot of lore just written into the game itself, which is visible through monitors. As you're walking through the game, you can learn about all the different crewmates. And through dialogue with all the different crewmates, it builds a really rich story for a game that is so simple. Personally, my favorite section of the game, let's say, would be the labyrinth, or the laboratory. Sorry, it's the laboratory. I always refer to it as lab, and lab could either be labyrinth or yes. Anyway, I think it has the best music in the game, and I really like all the mechanics with the bouncing that they introduce, like the line flips with the gravity flipping. And I can gush about this game so much. I just love so much about it. So please feel free to like cut me off or ask specific questions about it. But yeah, for me, I think my favorite part is the lab.
Yes, same. The lab is my favorite level. It has my favorite maneuver in it, and my favorite song, and my favorite character, which is Dr. Victoria. But word has to be said for Warp Zone as well, because when you can get that down, it's super satisfying.
It is. And also, I think that with all the lore that you see throughout the level, whether you're looking through the computer or whether you're taking the time to talk to the people, I mean, I know that this is probably, pun intended, but it reminds me of the Metroid Prime games, in which that if you just go through the game, you have not exactly a lot of context to what is going on, other than just like, going through each part of the world and trying to like accomplish every single task that you're given. But if you take the time to scan everything and to like look through all the Chozo lore and the space pirate logs and stuff like that, you get like the idea about what the story is about. And that's one of the things I like about this game, is that if you take the time to read everything, you find out every single character's dilemma, what they're going through, even information about each part of the levels itself. Another famous thing that a lot of people always bring up is the sad elephant room. And they're
Yes.
always like
Oh,
bringing
yeah.
in like their own interpretation as to why it's even there. So yeah,
Mhm.
I think that as a game as basic as it is, it really brings in a lot that a lot of people seem to really appreciate. And that's just one of the good things that I really enjoy about games that seem simple on the outside, but on the inside, when you look more into it, there's a lot more to it than what meets the eye.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. V has like as much depth as you want it to have. Like if you just want to speed run it and ignore everything, you can. If you want to learn everything about every character, you can do that as well. Like there's even a love story if you actually read all the conversations. Um, so yeah, I mean there's something for everyone, I think.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's also very interesting that the game changes. Like you can, because like you mentioned in the description of the game, there's no like locks on any areas or anything. You can go into any area at any time. Which also means that you can take any crewmate into any section that you would like. So it gives you the opportunity to take, for example, Verdigris into intermission one with you, and you have to do that little escort mission throughout the game. If you take Verdigris into there, you actually get dialogue about him asking Viridian for love advice because he has a crush on Violet. So it's little details like that. Whereas versus when you take Vermilion in, Vermilion just talks about random stuff. But and then yeah, it's a really interesting way that you can kind of replay the game and bond with characters differently.
Absolutely. And I think that that sense of freedom is what makes it really unique because, there's been a lot of games in recent years that seem to be really linear. Like you have to take like a very specific path in order for you to get things. Like you can't go to section 3 without going over to section 2 and then section 1 and then section 4 and etc. So
Mhm.
and I really like that you can be able to just go to any place that you want to, and depending on what location that you go to, it changes, and you get more things that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise. And that's what I like about even games like the Mega Man series. It's like you get to play as Mega Man and defeat any robot master or any maverick that you want in any specific order, and depending on who you beat, you get a different result. Like the stages change, or the rearrangements of the robot masters are slightly different. So I really like little details like that. That's something that I always appreciate when it comes to video games.
Definitely.
Yeah, so you brought this up earlier, but we definitely need to talk about the soundtrack. I really enjoy the soundtrack. It's like one of my
Absolutely.
favorites.
Oh
Yeah,
my
it
gosh, it is
rules.
so good. It is so good. And like for the years, like there was a long period of time where I didn't play this game regularly. Like I played it a lot when it came out, and then recently when I got into speedrunning it about a year and a half ago. But that entire time that I wasn't playing the game, I was actively listening to the V soundtrack. It's a soundtrack I listen to very often, and there's so many good like remixes of it. There's
Mhm.
also the official, like the metal version of the soundtrack, which you can actually, if you buy a copy of the metal soundtrack, you get a file that you can then put in the game's directory to listen to the metal soundtrack in the game.
Hmm. Yeah, that's
Very
actually
cool
pretty
stuff.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoy the fact that they were able to have that kind of option, because usually they would have like maybe just one soundtrack and maybe another soundtrack, but you only listen to it by itself. You don't include that in the game. So again, I really like that they were able to include that as well, because it gives variety. It's like, okay, which version do you want to listen to? Do you want to listen to the classic chip tunes version, or do you want to listen to the metal version? It's kind of like how when it comes to like updated music, whether you like the chip tune or you like the orchestral stuff, people can be able to switch on and off if they want to. So yeah, that's another thing that I really do appreciate. And major shout out to Magnus Plausen, aka Soli, for composing the music. And he did a fantastic job with writing such really great upbeat songs and melancholic songs, depending on which level that you're at. And it
Mhm.
plays just as much of a major part in what makes this game great, just as much as the gameplay, the story, and the graphics. I think that it's like one of the major pieces that is a major standout what makes this such a great experience. If you haven't listened to the soundtrack, I highly recommend that you check it out, whether you play through it in the game or you go over to Paulson's website and you can download the music, or you can purchase his CD, or you even get the metal version if you prefer that way. Yeah, so I'm
Absolutely.
actually really excited to have you guys on the show because you guys are in the speed running community, and also you guys have done many speed runs of V in the past. So I like to know, I mean, out of all the games that you guys have speed run and with V, what makes V such a fun game to speed run?
Um, it's honestly it's a combination of a lot of stuff we just mentioned. It's a very satisfying game. It feels really satisfying to be able to zip through rooms and just like completely go so fast, not even thinking about having to do the puzzles anymore. It is a really nice feeling experience. And for me, I the soundtrack is a big part of it. If I am playing a game for, upwards of 700 hours at this point, I want to
Yeah,
make sure that the music I'm listening to is excellent and it never disappoints. Um, but it's a combination of a lot of things. It is the perfect length also for me for speedrunning. I can finish it in somewhere under 16 minutes, which is an amazing feat. It's taken me a while to get there.
absolutely.
But yeah, it's tough. But it's a nice short speed run that I can just basically pick it up, play a run, and then put it down if I want and come back to it another time. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I think that there are two keys that have kept me interested in V. The first, the tricks are satisfying at whatever proficiency you play the game at. If you're a beginner, the beginner tricks are satisfying, and if you're an expert like Crime, those tricks are very satisfying still. And also the competition between me and Crime have kept me coming back to the game again and again and again because
Oh,
she's
definitely, yeah.
constantly trying to overtake my time and constantly doing it, and so I have to come back and beat her time. It's and we also help each other learn tricks, so it's like
Yeah,
kind of helping each other beat one another. It's weird, but it's
there's a
great.
lot of I guess like community involved in speed running. Like basically every time I learn something new, I'm like, hey, Indy, do you know how to do this? Did you see me do that?
Yeah.
Or I'll notice that he has a better time than me and I'll be like, can you like show me what you did there so that we can, improve together. Which also makes it really fun when we do races at events, because
Mm.
you'll frequently see that we're like a second apart.
Yeah.
Makes it really, really entertaining to watch.
Mm.
Yeah. And I also really do enjoy when you guys speed run against each other, because if you guys have like a trick or maybe just a quick shortcut that you're able to take advantage of, and then all of a sudden like something happens where you have to like, catch up with the person, it really makes things interesting, especially since more or less you guys are doing the same strategy. And I think that
Hmm.
that's really commendable that you guys are able to share those kind of secrets, because I'm sure that some of the maybe there's a misconception or two. It's like, oh, no, we keep that information to ourselves because we want to be the best, we want to stay on top. But no, I mean, usually when it comes to like communities like this, you share that information with one another. You're like a big family. There's no competition. It's just all a part of doing this for whatever reason, whether it be for raising money for charity like you guys do, for even just for the sport of it. I think that that's just awesome that there's no qualms between any speedrunners if one is able to do better than the other.
Yeah, it depends. It's highly dependent on the community, but everyone in this community is super friendly. We're all just doing it for the love of the game.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm sure that there's people out there that maybe would like to even check out VVVV and maybe even do a speed run. So what tips would you like to, give them so that they can get themselves started?
Sure. If you go to speedrun.com, and you look up the game, just search VVVVVV, you will find a whole wealth of information and the leaderboards for the game, and also a link to the Discord, where they discuss strats and tips. But if you don't want to join, if you're not quite ready to join the Discord community, on the speedrun.com page, there's also guides and resources and links to like tutorials and whatnot, so you can get started. Another thing that I like to do, I like to encourage people, like when they're interested in learning a speed game for the first time, like take a look at the different records on the leaderboard. You might not want to go look right at first place and try to copy their strats. It might be more manageable for you to look at something that's lower down on the leaderboard, so you can get an idea of like, oh, this is how the route for this game goes. This is more what I would look like when I'm starting out, and set yourself a goal and try to beat it. And then of course, feel free to like reach out to any of us in the community for help. We're always willing to teach. It's such a great game, and I always love seeing people get into it.
Awesome.
Yeah, definitely. That's really great advice. And I would just say don't be discouraged by your first like 20 runs of the game. Like my first run was 93 minutes and I had like 800 deaths, and now my time is below 16 minutes and I normally have like 12 deaths. So don't be discouraged. You can totally make progress.
Definitely. Like the first time you run it is going to be probably terrible, but the next 2 times you're probably going to half that time each time.
Just focus on the fun for the beginning.
Oh, for sure. What was like the hardest thing that you had to overcome when trying to do a speed run?
Oh gosh,
memorizing the rooms, I think.
Memorizing the rooms and the routes to the different areas. Because
the one thing about V is how you enter a room is just as important as what you do in that room, because the cycles are so fast. So once you memorize what room is coming up next, you'll be prepared to enter it properly, and that'll improve your time so much.
All right. And I just want to give one final quick question right before we wrap things up. So yeah, what would you say the legacy of VVVVV as a whole? Like what would you say that what do you think are the main reasons why it still resonated after over a decade later?
It's one of those like timeless games. I think just everything in that game is executed so well, and it doesn't feel like it's dated. It's like it might look like it's from a different era, but like even then when it came out, it was already trying to emulate the styles of the past. Retro gaming, I think, will always be popular, and this is just such an exemplary game between gameplay, music, and just everything about it. I think it's a really good game.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. I think the retro style helps a lot. It's also simple and very satisfying and very approachable. Hopefully it doesn't look too intimidating for beginners. Especially if you don't like start watching the world record run right away, watch some of the lower ones. But yeah, it's super satisfying to play, and it keeps people coming back, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that what makes it a timeless game is that it already looks retro. And I even heard some person, a long time ago said that, sprites like 8 to 16-bit sprites, or even like pixelated sprites from like old 80s PCs, if done correctly, that stuff will forever be timeless and perpetually retro. And I think that if you're able to take these old tools and revitalize it to make it new again, it'll keep people coming back. And then there'll be like a new wave of people looking back in nostalgia. It's like, oh, instead of like, this reminds me of that game from the 80s. And now it's going to be like, oh, this reminds me of, when indie games were just starting to become really, really popular. And I think that it's going to be like a game that will still forever be in the test of time as to, why people would, gravitate to a game like that, whether it be with the graphics or with the music, the gameplay, the storylines. I think that there's a lot to enjoy with V. And if any of you guys are really interested in checking it out, then there's many ways that you can do it. It's released on multiple platforms. It's released on many sites like Steam. It's fairly affordable. So please, I recommend that if this sounds like a game that you are really interested in, then please, I recommend that you check it out. All right. Well, that is the end of this episode of Casual Chat. So, Metroid Crime, Indy, thank you so much for coming on by.
Thank you for
Thanks for
having me.
having us.
Yeah. So, please, why don't you guys plug and promote your stuff?
Sure. I'm Metroid Crime. You can find me at twitch.tv/Metroid Crime, or on any social media service. Just search me up. And I'm actually going to be playing VVVVVV at Summer Games Done Quick 2023, which is coming up very soon. On my run is at on June 2nd at around 6 a.m. ish. But there will be a VOD up on Games Done Quick's channel afterwards. So come and check me out if you're interested in seeing me play V really quickly.
Yes, absolutely. I'll also be on comms for that run at SGDQ. I'm super excited about that. I'm IndyVillain on basically every social media, Twitch and Twitter, and give me a follow if you want to talk about V.
All right, awesome. And as for me, you can check me out on oldschoollane.net. I'm on YouTube, which is youtube.com/oldschoollane. You can check out my other social media platforms, which is facebook.com/oldschoollane. I'm on Twitter at Patty_B_Miranda. You can check out the podcast on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Radio Public, iHeartRadio, multiple places. New episodes of the podcast will go there first, and then it'll go up in a few days on YouTube. So thank you so much for listening, everyone. Let us know in the comments below about your thoughts on V. Did you get acquainted with it either through the indie crowd, or were you one of those people who actually saw people like Metroid Crime and IndyVillain play it on Awesome Games Done Quit? What are your thoughts of the game as a whole, whether you like it for the graphics or the gameplay or the music or the storyline, or maybe you're a person who's never even played the game before? Does this sound interesting to you? And if you have played it for the first time, what are your thoughts on it? Thank you so much for listening. Hope to see you around soon, and take care.